Hello, welcome to Hat Trick. I'm Jordan Dollar Coltman, joined this week by Braydon and Elliott. Nice to have all three of us back together. Elliott, you've had a busy couple weeks off. I know you were at a wedding. Braydon and I were questioning whether or not it was Darnell Nurse's. Would you mind setting the record straight? Were you or were you not at Doc's wedding?
I was not at Darnell Nurse's wedding. Sorry, I was invited, but I had already committed to another wedding, so that was the one that I was at.
Well, of course, you can't hit them all. And this is wedding season, certainly. Braydon, any weddings you've been to lately?
No, sadly, I haven't been to any weddings. I am still looking to crash a few weddings this summer. So, weddings taking place. What was that noise? Did you hear that?
I did, yeah.
Anyway.
All right. Well, with that, let's get to it. Here's topic one.
I hope we hear that in the recording.
I hope so too.
That was not.
What did it sound like?
I just did it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, topic one is it's a difficult topic to address here on what has become Canada's unofficial Padres podcast. Look, Elliott, we have been for weeks eagerly inviting new people to join the bandwagon. It is after the trade deadline that Padres bandwagon got big. I can tell you right now, just from like my own private polling, having seen like 4 or 5 people at work all of a sudden wearing Padres hats, people whom I've never seen wear a single baseball hat or a team affiliated piece of merchandise in my life. All of a sudden, they're all Padres fans. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who became Padres fans, and a lot of people who had a lot of excitement following the Juan Soto trade and just seeing this team bulk up, prepare for a big push to try to compete with the Dodgers. And the biggest addition they were anticipating returning to the lineup, Fernando Tatis Jr., will not be playing this season or even into next season. He has been handed an 80-game suspension by the league for violating its anti-doping policy. He has been accused and I guess caught with the banned substance clostebol in his system. It is a medication originally he claims he took to treat ringworm. That's a whole other conversation. The point being, it is a banned substance. It is a substance that has been banned for several years, and many players have been suspended for having in their system because it is one of the drugs that the anti-doping agencies in both the United States and WADA, the international one, recognize to be a drug that is easy to slip by many tests because it has a very short half-life in your system. So you have to have just recently taken it for it to even show up. So when it shows up, it's quite obvious, apparently. Look, I know, Elliott, this has got to be difficult. You're a bona fide, diehard Padres fan. What was this news like? How crushing and how frustrating was it?
Yeah, I mean, let me just start by addressing the Padres bandwagon thing. I appreciate that now they've got one of the best players in baseball. Everyone now is a fan, but for us diehards, people like me that have been following the team for close to 7 months now, well before the trade deadline, it's a little bit insulting. In terms of this situation, this is absolutely devastating news, incredibly frustrating, and just so stupid. And it's the type of self-inflicted wound that the Padres, as a fan, we've just come to accept following this team. It's the ups and downs of this team, going from we're going to win the World Series to losing, our star player in Fernando Tatis Jr. for something that is just it's inexcusable. It's absolutely inexcusable that he tested positive for this substance. In fact, I would say as a diehard Padres fan and deeply committed to the team, his absence this entire year has been completely inexcusable. He broke his wrist in the off season doing motocross. That's not something that when you've committed, when a city, an organization has committed over a third of $1 billion to you, and shown that commitment and that engagement that you can do. And I just, for me, shows like a clear lack of maturity, and he hasn't figured it out yet. And It's awful. And I appreciate it. It's very clear that his teammates are very frustrated with him. It's clear that management, his managers are frustrated with him, the team president. What they just went from one of the best days and this amazing excitement around this team, and the Padres are here, baby. And this is a championship winning team. To have someone do something so selfish is just, it's so frustrating.
You mentioned the president. That's Preller. We'll go with Preller. Yeah. I'm going to read you a quote here because I think it is telling, and I'm sure that there's a lot of internal frustration within that organization. This is his quote, and I quote: "He's somebody from the organization standpoint we've invested time and money into. When he's on the field, he's a difference maker. You have to learn from your situations. We were hoping that from the offseason to now that there would be some maturity. And obviously with the news today, it's more of a pattern, and it's something that we've got to dig a bit more into. I'm sure he's very disappointed, but at the end of the day, it's one thing to say it. You've got to start showing by your actions," end quote. So that's some very, oftentimes we see in these situations, the team sort of rally around the player or stand by their defense. This feels very much like the organization is very open about their frustration and, more importantly, their disappointment in this player. And as he's pointed out in that quote, this is a pattern of behavior, obviously two different things, being injured and now failing a drug test. However, both of them are through his own actions. And in both situations, he is preventing himself from being able to contribute to the team on the field, a team that right now is riding an incredible emotional high. They have been winning big games. We've seen multiple walk-off home runs by Manny Machado. We've seen the impact of Soto and some of these other players. This is a good baseball team, and they were, I believe, very much counting on adding the kind of impact that he has when he swings a baseball bat, something we have not seen in a long time, and now we won't for at least another 80 games. Braydon, it's more than just 80 games, I should also say. It's 80 games. Those are regular season games. You are ineligible for the playoffs regardless of how far. So that doesn't also take down the total of games. He's probably missing 23 or 30 games into next season based on where we are right now. Braydon, obviously, we have seen over the past decade a very serious turn in how baseball responds to these situations. We have seen a lot more forceful response. Do you believe 80 games is a fair and just consequence for this kind of drug or this kind of action by this player? Or is this just where baseball is because of its lack of enforcement through the Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa days and the Alex Rodriguez situations? And they've gotten to this place where 80 games, even in a 123 game schedule, is a lot. It's a very stiff penalty.
Yeah, I think it's significant. I don't see why it needs to be any longer than that. There's clearly a precedent based on what you just said around other individuals who've done this. I think the unfortunate thing in this situation too is he's 23 years old. Most of these other guys who have gone through something like this, they're a bit more into their career, thinking A-Rod and when it was announced that they were actually using, it's very likely that they were using well before. The thing that it makes me think of though is, was this drug not administered by a team doctor? And if not, then the team doctors and the health professionals who are part of the organization and responsible for this player, where does that fit in? And how does, how does that part of it take responsibility? You see the kind of immaturity of saying, well, I didn't know it was a mistake, but you're a professional athlete. And like Elliott said, this guy's, they signed him to a 14-year, $340 million contract. The responsibility here is huge, and it goes beyond just his wherewithal. I think we're seeing the immaturity specifically in this player right now. He signed this contract and he was injured to a hamstring. Then he had this motorcycle accident. And then when asked about the motorcycle accident, he said, which one? There's clearly a bit of a problem here with this individual that the team needs to get a hold of. And again, it goes back to what, who's fully responsible for this, because I think it's beyond just one individual. But at the same time, taking responsibility and saying, that was in my system. I'm not going to appeal. Let's just get on with the suspension.
Well, I mean, I think that there's something more to this too. The other piece of this, you ask a great question around like, how did he get this drug and what had happened? And I'm just not buying the story about ringworm. Like, to me, that doesn't make any sense. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
Is it a preventative thing or is it a cure for ringworm?
Well, exactly. But the other piece of this is that Tatis Jr. has taken really strong stances with the team with regards to how he's rehabbed his numerous injuries that he's had. So we've talked about this broken wrist this year. He also had shoulder issues last year. In both situations, the more likely and more likely to be successful treatment was surgery, and he's refused that in both instances. The team has honored that, obviously wanting to placate to their star, $330 million player. But it also shows just like a lack of, not a lack of, it just shows a level of entitlement that I think is starting to become really worrying. And that's the other piece of this as well. I mean, it's hard to, it feels a bit like we're kicking a guy while we're down. And as a fierce Padres fan, I don't want to go too far down this piece, but it just is so, it's so stupid, and it's like self-inflicted. And it just feels like there's a lot more under the surface that maybe we don't hear about. But it's one of those things, where there's smoke, there's fire. And it feels like we're in that sort of a situation right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, I guess, about it, is that when you are a player of his bravado and sort of prominence in terms of, this organization, he was there when this organization began to build. They built around him with the plan to build around him, going out and getting these pieces. And he has seen this team in the last 4 years, I guess, progress to being a competitor and now a contender in many ways, certainly pushing the Dodgers in their division. And yet when you have that kind of a persona or presence or sort of impact as an athlete in that organization, the effects on both sides, positive when it's good and negative when it's bad, are amplified. And in this situation, I think that, 80 games is bad regardless of who the player is. But when it's this important or this big a player, it makes a bigger story. It becomes a bigger thing. And as you say, when it's attached to all of this other negativity that he has seemed to have been embroiled in, it's certainly difficult. It is becoming who he is looked at, I think, throughout the league as sort of a difficult piece of the Padres puzzle. And can he turn that around? Can he fix that? And how much patience do the Padres have for that? They can't just sit around now waiting for him to join them. They expect to find success. They've put these other players
practically replaced him with Soto this year.
But can you imagine what they were expecting was to have both of them? I mean, that's a very dangerous team. And now they are, as you say, now they need Soto to replace him, but that wasn't the plan.
Well, and I think that there's a lot, we're starting to bring in Soto, and I thought you guys did a great job of covering this while I was away. The conversation around Soto now, like, you have to wonder if at all this has any impact on the future of Soto and the team. He's committed now for 2 more years. That's obviously, what they have to do. But the goal with with acquiring him was obviously for 2 more years with the Padres. But there was also significant conversation around offering him another big blockbuster deal to stay with the team. And ultimately, everyone knows the reports. Soto turned down $440 million with the Nationals. That's why he was available. So it would feel like at this point, the Padres are in the best position to sort of sign him and have the first crack at it. You have to wonder if this type of behavior impacts Soto's decision-making. And there is always that secondary piece as well, too. And that's another concern, my initial concern as well.
Yeah, this is a bit tangential, but I would be curious to know kind of the statistics around what the differences between major leagues are when it comes to doping or performance enhancing drugs, because it seems to be so relevant in baseball, and it continues to be relevant in baseball. And I wonder if there's a difference between, how many milligrams is somebody using. When we talk about steroids, there's this big, this guy juiced up so that he could be, incredibly powerful and be able to hit a ball. But when you look at the use of what some of these people have used it for, of rehab, and of, they're not playing the game when they're rehabbing, and there's just different, it brings in the sticky substance conversation. There's just constantly these things in baseball where we go, no, that's cheating.
Yeah, well, I go back to when I first posed the first question to you. I think I go back to that part of it, which is this. I mean, this is a sport that has a very tarnished legacy because of a almost 20-year period where they let steroids and performance-enhancing drugs run rampant, unchecked, and as a result, they found themselves in a real political, to be quite frank, mess about it later on. All of this is a systemic thing, very American, about recognizing, sort of the integrity of these organizations and the integrity of the sport. And baseball specifically, I think, because of how dramatically statistically driven it is, both historically and at the present, evaluating players all comes down to these incredibly complicated, mathematic, acrobatic movements through the stat sheet. That's how you identify talent. And if you are tampering with the integrity of that part of it, you are cutting right to the core of what the, most sort of nuance of what the sport is. That's why I think it's more prevalent here, because this is a sport that is paying amends for, as I say, like 20, 30, probably longer period of time. And specifically, they found themselves looking at these massive records being shattered, the single home run record where you had both these guys chasing 61 and all of a sudden they're putting up 70 in a season. And then of course it comes out, both of them are doping. Both of them are using an enhancement, and both of them the same defense stands that, Lance used and everybody else has used, which is, well, everybody was doing it. Why is it illegal? And you can get to the same place with that probably in a lot of sports, but I think baseball, because of its history, and also, like, to be fair, this is a sport that is built around two primary skills: throwing a ball as hard as you possibly can with some complexities to how it's spinning, and hitting it. And hitting it comes down to two things: one, contact, and then power. And if you can increase your power even a little bit as a slugger in the major leagues, you go from being an average player to a great player very, very quickly. Yeah. If you can hit that ball harder than you were before, the drugs make a difference.
Totally.
In football,
here's the difference.
And in hockey or in soccer, performance-enhancing drugs are about recovery. They're about, because it's an endurance sport, it's about physical exertion. Baseball's not that. This is the biggest guy with the biggest stick hitting a rock.
Look at this situation. Look at this specific situation compared to all of, we were talking about Barry Bonds, we're talking about Clemens, these guys used those drugs during as they were playing, as they were on the roster. Sure. This situation here with Tatis this is a recovery.
You're right. So and if you want to blame it on them, you can blame it on them. That is why we're here. We're here because there was performance enhancing impacting on the field. So now it doesn't matter what the reason you give is. The point is, once the drugs are banned, they're banned. Once the implementation of the rules is there, it is black and white. And that's the detail here. 80 games is 80 games because that's the rule. It isn't about the nuances of whether or not you used it for a specific reason, right? I mean, it's the same defense that people gave for Lance Armstrong all those years. Well, he had chemotherapy. He probably needed the drugs to get back to where he was competitive.
But he was
that
also
doesn't matter. Those were the rules.
Yeah, it wasn't a recovery thing for him.
And all I'm pointing out is Tatis Jr. was preparing to play again. He was tested, Braydon, as an active player on a rehab stint in the minors. He was playing when the drug was found. You can't say they randomly tested him while he was sitting there with a cast on his wrist. He was an active player ready to play. That's why he got caught in a random drug test. Yeah. So he was using it while playing, I guess is my point. Was it perhaps as performance enhancing as some other kind of anabolic steroid? I don't know. I'm not I'm not a chemist. Any final thoughts here, Elliott, before we leave your beloved Padres?
Yeah, I mean, I just on that point, you can't help but think this has to do with his recovery and his decision not to do surgery and go through a more generalized recovery. And you have to wonder if this drug had a role in accelerating that, which would be unfair. And but that was that's where my mind went to. It wasn't ringworm. It was trying to get back as quickly as possible. That's where I until someone tells me otherwise, that's where my mind's going to be. Regardless, stupid decision, and it's really put a damper on what was a really exciting season for these Padres.
Yeah, and they're on the brink. I mean, they're really on that place where they needed him to propel them into the playoffs. I mean, they likely still can get there, but that's a huge loss. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and I
we
just
shall
going
see.
up against the Dodgers, that was the type of firepower that they were going to need. They need sort of hit him, Machado, and Soto all together because, like I've said all year, their hitting is not where it needs to be. The rest down the lineup, so it's a major blow, and it will. I don't think it'll impact their capacity to make the playoffs, but it certainly will impact their capacity in the playoffs for sure.
All right. Well, we will leave this conversation there for now. That's topic one.
Topic 2 this week is brought to us by Busy Bee Vegan Skincare. Busy Bee is an all-natural skincare line dedicated to healthy, vegan, plant-based skincare and overall wellness. They offer a selection of handcrafted body scrubs, butters, and washes that not only make your skin glow, but smell amazing. Their unique all-natural scents include gingerbread, ruby grapefruit, caramel cake, and morning latte. So why not treat your skin to something fresh and all-natural? Head over to shopbusybeevegan.com today. And as a special bonus, Busy Bee is offering listeners of this podcast a 15% discount on your first order with the code OrdinaryPodcasts.
All right, off to topic 2 here, and we have some interesting news that we've just learned this week. It isn't sort of happening yet. This feels kind of like a moment premature, but we thought we'd take a moment to stop and acknowledge the career of Serena Williams, who announced this week that following the U.S. Open, she intends to step away from tennis. She has yet to call it a formal retirement, but that is what it is. She's decided that she wants to spend more time with her family, with her new daughter or young daughter, her husband, and away from this sport that has basically been her life since she was very, very young child. And she has become one of the greatest, if not the greatest tennis players of all time, certainly the greatest woman tennis player of all time. She's dominated the sport right from entering it as a 16-year-old, right up through, almost now 3 decades of playing. She holds many, many records. I think the most impressive of that being 33 Grand Slam titles. She's the only player in tennis, male or female, to ever win 3 of the 4 Grand Slams 6 times, which is just unbelievable. She has succeeded both as a singles player and as a doubles player. And as a doubles player, her only doubles partner through her entire career was her sister, Venus, who in her own right was an amazing player. But Serena has just found a different level, has always seemed to succeed in there. The one stat, though, that blows my mind is women's doubles with Serena Williams since 1999. They've competed in, I believe, almost 14 tournaments, and they have a career record of 14-0 in Grand Slam tournaments as a doubles team. So when they went into a tournament together as a Grand Slam doubles team, they never lost, which is very, very impressive. Look, it's a huge career. There's a lot to unpack there. I think that along with being one of the most important women athletes of our lifetimes, she is equally a very important ambassador for the Black community as a woman of color. She is a huge ambassador for equal rights and for causes all over the board that she has fought for throughout her career. She has never been afraid to speak her mind. She has never been afraid to back down. She has never backed down when pushed on issues that she cares about. And she has also often been sort of an inflection point in conversations around societal shifts and changes. I think back to the French Open, probably about 5, 6, 7 years ago, where she was, they would not allow her to wear what they called at the time the Nike cat suit, right? It was like a full length to the wrist, to the ankles, basically skin tight black leotard style spandex suit that Nike had specifically designed for her as an ambassador athlete. It was incredibly form-fitting, and she is a larger woman, a Black woman with curves, not necessarily fitting the traditional, blonde, blue-haired, skinny, small female tennis player. And the French authority at the time felt that they were not comfortable with her wearing that as it was too revealing, to which she responded, "This thing makes me feel and look like a superhero, and I want little Black girls all over America to know that Black bodies are beautiful too." So for me, there's so many highlights when you look at who she was, not only as an athlete, but as an ambassador for her sport, for her causes for who she is as a woman. And I just wanted to give us a full segment here as a hats off prelude, just to sort of pay tribute to what was an amazing career. She played her last game in Toronto, or last game in Canada, I should say, in Toronto this weekend. Got a lot of attention there too. She was unable to go through that tournament, but she will play, as I say, at the US Open, and that should be her final tournament. Elliott, I know that you've been a big fan of Serena Williams a long time. We had a conversation about this maybe a year ago, early on in this show's life, where we discussed whether or not she was the GOAT across male and female lines in tennis. So I'll ask you again, is Serena Williams, as she prepares to leave the sport, the greatest to ever play it?
Yeah, I without question, I think she's one of the greatest athletes of all time to play any sport, man, woman, whatever sport you're talking about. She's, and the reason why I say that is sort of twofold. You touched a lot on this during your opening, but I just want to circle back. One, her performance on the court was unmatched. She was dominant for a long time. She would fighting through injuries, coming back from injuries, obviously. Having a child, coming back and getting to the same form that she was then, and having done that for a long time. But I also think the barriers that she broke in what was a traditionally white, what you think about as like the stereotypical white environment. The only one I could think probably less inclusive would probably be golf, but tennis is right up there. And what her and her sister, have managed to do in the sport and in the space is amazing. It's a great loss. I feel very honored that, I got to spend a lot of time watching her and build her career. And it will be sad to see her go, but I'm thankful that, as I am with any athlete that this happens to, it's on her terms and not for a health reason or something like that. So yeah, but to circle back to your question, greatest of all time across any sports, it has to be like top 2, top 3. I can't. Who else are you talking about?
Yeah. Right. So Braydon, I'll ask you the same question, but I'll just rephrase it a little bit. When you do look at the kind of impact she's had, is she one of, if not the most sort of influential athletes of our generation in terms of the impact she's had?
Yeah, and that again, just jumping off of being a GOAT, she has really excelled beyond just the court. That really leads the way. People and fans, they flock to winners and champions and people who succeed. And beyond just the activism off the court, she's involved in fashion all around the world. She's got endorsement deals through many different places and things. She's a part owner for the Miami Dolphins. She's got charity work, year round that she's focused on. She's a writer. She's invested in an all women's soccer team. She's constantly, she's got her hands in a lot of different areas that she believes in. And, to be successful on the court, I think just that energy she's able to bring in all aspects of her life. And I think that also what makes her such a GOAT, her greatest of all time. And two, just going back to her tennis career, like tennis might be one of the hardest physical sports to play when it comes down to, the amount of injuries she's had to endure throughout her career and the impact on your knees and it's the stamina that it takes to play the game, to be able to be as successful as she has it well into her 40th turn around the sun is remarkable.
Yeah, I think I think everything both of you have said is right. And I think that what's fascinating and sort of just beautiful about her career as a whole is that it is so diverse and complicated, and in so many ways just so rich with these kind of diverse factors, these different parts of it. Yes, she had to be an absolute elite tennis player to get the attention and to earn the attention that she got. But she equally was a charismatic and fascinating person playing tennis. She was often, very emotional on the court. We've had many instances throughout her career of very explosive matches that ended in shouting matches with the officials, or, being ejected from matches because of her emotions spilling out. I think back to a US Open, I believe she was disqualified from because she yelled at a line judge who made a call she didn't like. And it became this very big, almost scandalous situation where, the athlete was screaming at the official. And in tennis, you're kind of right on top of it. And there's 1,000 different examples of it, but you go back to it and you start to think, would she have been treated differently had she been a man in the same situation? And because she represented so many things in so many different ways, again, a woman of color in an athletic pursuit in America, under the circumstances that we have experienced throughout the last, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, the importance of being, all of the things that she was. I think that when you're able to not only succeed, but become one of the most dominant in your sport through those circumstances, and at the same time, hold on to all of these other parts of who she was. I mean, for me, it's not even a question. I think she will retire as the greatest tennis player to ever live. I think equally, she will go down as one of the most important athletes of our generation. I think that equally, she will probably go down as one of the most influential celebrities or sort of people of our generation. Look, it is not easy to become a one name sort of person. But when you say Serena, in sports circles, they know who you're talking about. She has become so synonymous with that. She has become so clearly identifiable. It is Tiger, it's Jordan, it's Brady, and it's Serena. I mean, and Gretzky, or, like the Babe Ruth. Yeah. There's so many players who meant so much, but for me, it's her. I mean, you can have the conversation about Federer and Nadal and Djokovic all together. They're all three the best athletes in their moment, but they all existed at the same moment. And while they were all sort of fighting over who was going to be number one on the men's side, Serena is just racking up win after win after win. And again, going back to those other athletes, like when Tiger was at his pinnacle, early 2000s, when he showed up on a leaderboard 4 or 5 strokes back on a Sunday, everyone ahead of him played poorly because they knew he was coming. When you were down by 3, 6, 9 points in the fourth quarter and you knew Jordan had the ball, you knew you were in danger, right? We were talking with Tyler about this on Pit Stop the other week. It's starting to get like that right now with Max Verstappen. It's like, if Max Verstappen has a car under him, he's going to win, right? Lewis was like that for a long time. Tiger was like that. Jordan was like that. Look, Tom Brady has never won a Super Bowl that his team was not trailing going into halftime. That tells you how good he is. Serena Williams, when she made a Grand Slam final, she was going to win it. For so long, it was a sure thing. And sure, look, at the end of the day, what's the line? Father Time is undefeated. She's old for a tennis player. All these players she's now playing against grew up idolizing her. And I think she's recognizing that and starting to go, you know what? I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. I have other things I care about, and I have very little left to accomplish and prove here. I think I've done what I have to do. And for me, that's why I think, as Elliott said, it's so nice to see someone go out knowing she still could. Like Serena Williams could still very much compete and win titles, but she has nothing left to prove as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, I think the other thing to count on too, that this will be missed. There will be lots of things about Serena that will be missed. But, when there was a racially charged event going on in the world, and whether tangentially related to sports or not at all, there were generally 2 to 3 athletes that were asked to comment on it. It was always LeBron James, generally Tiger Woods, and it was Serena Williams. And just in terms of her advocacy and willingness to engage in difficult and hard things, I think that also can't be missed as well too. And I think I want to just shout out to that as well.
Yeah, I think as we've all pointed out, I mean, there's so many different stories. There's so many different pieces of it. Her legacy is so long. And I personally am just really excited to see what she does now with the rest of her life and the rest of the legacy that I know she will continue to build, as whether that's in the public eye, where it's simply going and being a mother to her beautiful child and enjoying the fruits of her labor, because I have a feeling it won't be quite so private. She has a lot of interests and a lot of people that will now be coming and knocking on the door saying, hey, would you like to come out and do this? And I know we'll see a lot more of her in the future, but for now, we'll all take a collective hats off to Serena Williams. That's topic 2.
Hello, football fans and fans of the Ordinary Podcast Network. My name is Tyler Walzak. I am here with Puya Ricey, and we are starting a podcast called Running Down the Clock.
Each week, we're going to bring to you a little bit of football talk, player news, controversies, headlines, all the big plays, and then football action that you can handle.
On August 11th, we will be debuting our podcast, and we are going to break down each division of the NFL up until the season begins. And once that season begins, it is nonstop football talk every Thursday for the rest of the season. We look forward to you listening to us on the Ordinary Podcast Network.
Let's finish off with a hats off. It's been a while since all three of us were together, so it feels like it's a good time to do it. I'll go first. Big win today for a young man who has been waiting for a big win. He has been the bridesmaid for far too long at majors and far too long at big PGA tournaments. It's well overdue for Will Zalatoris to get a win under his belt. He wins his first PGA Tour win. It's in the playoffs at the FedEx Cup. He wins the St. Jude Championship, his very first win as a PGA player. A young man who has fought very hard and has been incredibly good. I believe he was the runner-up or in third place this year at the US Open. At the Masters, he was up there competing. He's just been missing out on those opportunities. He went into a playoff today for this tournament. And I don't know if you saw the highlights, guys. It was a shot. The first playoff hole, he and the man he was playing off against, whose name has escaped me in the moment because he didn't win. They both had to take the first shot was across. It's a par 3 to an island green, and his shot hit the rock barrier that surrounds the island green. It bounced straight up in the air, bounced off the rocks again, bounced probably 2-3 times. It was very Kawhi Rim-esque. Everyone's breath held, watching, waiting for it to drop into the water for the penalty, and it nestled itself between the edge of the grass on the rock, like an impossible shot. And then everyone thought, well, he's probably going to have to take a drop because you can't make that shot anyway. So they go to his opponent. His opponent takes a shot, and his shot is almost identical. Hits the rocks, but his hits the water trap. So Will gets sort of a bye because they're both going to take a penalty regardless. And he goes on to win it with a 10-foot putt. So a fantastic accomplishment for a great, just one of those good guys in sport that I've been rooting for him for a while, just hoping he'd get a win. So Will Zalatoris, my hat goes off to you. Elliott?
Yeah, that was going to be mine. So I'm going to go to one Kent Johnson, who pulled off the Michigan move in the World Juniors this year. Of course, no one's seen it because we're all boycotting the World Juniors and Team Canada as we should be. But I did see the clip of it, and to do that in practice is incredible. When you don't have the pressure of a game, which is literally the fastest game on earth. But to do it from behind the net, score a goal like that. It's dark clouds around that tournament, but it's tough because it's really important for the young men that are there now in their careers, and it's generally an important moment in a young hockey player's life, and so be able to do something like that, you just want to acknowledge the skill and talent associated with that. But yeah, let's all just go back to not watching the tournament, though.
Braydon?
All right, I am tipping my hat to, we just spoke about a titan in Serena Williams when it came to success in sport, in her sport, and activism around the world. And I think we would be remiss to not recognize and honor the legacy of the great Bill Russell, who passed away this month. 11-time champion. He stood with Dr. King, and he stood with Muhammad Ali, and this was just a great, he is a greatest of all time. And the NBA honoring his legacy they'll be retiring his number 6 across the league. This will be the first league-wide number that has been retired. Adam Silver saying Bill Russell's unparalleled success on the court and pioneering civil rights activism deserves to be honored in a unique and historic way. Permanently retiring the number 6 across the NBA ensures that Bill's transcending career will always be recognized. Obviously, there are still number 6s in the league, a la LeBron James, but after this year, they won't be issuing that number out again. So, an amazing man, Bill Russell. I think a titan when it comes to just sport and championship and winning and success, and doing the right thing. So hats off to Bill Russell.
Yeah, as you say, the first time the NBA has done, I believe it's only the third time in North American sport we've seen it. Jackie Robinson's 42, obviously retired league-wide in the MLB. Gretzky retired with the 99 when he retired. I guess the NFL probably retires the 12, maybe when Tom retires. But the bigger question here is, and it's interesting because I've heard a lot of different responses to this. Obviously, a huge honor, but ironically, probably the last guy that would want that kind of recognition would have been Bill Russell. He was such an sort of soft-spoken, but equally avoided the fanfare, recognized it was there. I mean, we've seen him a few times because I believe the championship MVP trophy is named after Bill Russell. Is that right? Yeah. So obviously, you saw him in those kind of places of recognition, but he would have been the last guy to want this or ask for this. But I think it's a beautiful thing the NBA did. So I commend that one too, Braydon. That's a great one.
11 championships, eh?
Oh yeah, no, just dominant.
Doesn't have enough fingers for all them rings.
That's right. Thank you, Braydon. Thank you, Elliott. Thanks everybody for listening. Again, if you haven't yet, please go subscribe. And as well, I mentioned this last week. It launched on Thursday. Please go check out Running Down the Clock. It's the newest podcast from the Ordinary Podcasting Network. Premiered, as I said, last Thursday. They've got 2 more episodes, 2 more divisions are going to break down this Thursday, and they will continue to do that until the start of the regular season for the NFL. It's a fun show. It's a fast-paced show. It gets a little heated this week, so tune in for that Thursday. Running Down the Clock. And you can also find all of the other things you want to know about the Ordinary Podcasting Network on our website, ordinarypodcasts.com. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week. That was Hat Trick. Hat Trick is a member of the Ordinary Podcasting Network. It's produced every week by Jordan Dowler Coleman and Braydon Dowler Coleman. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thanks for listening.
The Ordinary Podcasting Network wishes to acknowledge that the lands on which our conversations take place include Treaty 6 territory, the traditional meeting ground and home for many Indigenous peoples, including the Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, and the Nakota Sioux peoples, as well as the unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations.
We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for generations. And we extend our appreciation for the opportunity to live, create, and share stories on these territories.
The Ordinary Podcasting Network intends to engage in conversations and dialogue which acknowledge that reconciliation is not a destination, but a journey, and that we remain committed to practicing our craft in a decolonized space.